The alien princess ignored everyone, until a single human made her truly happy. HFY Princess Salith of the Orcs' dominion stood at the edge of the grand observation balcony, looking out over the capital city. Thousands of lights floated in the air like silent stars, powered by advanced alien technology older than most civilizations. The city was alive, beautiful, and endlessly impressive, yet none of it touched her heart. Behind her, the palace halls were filled with voices, music, and celebration. Another gathering had been arranged in her honor. Another night where nobles, generals, scholars, and diplomats would compete for a moment of her attention. They would praise her wisdom, admire her beauty, and speak of destiny and duty. Salith already knew every word they would say. She felt nothing. At 22 standard cycles, Salith was the sole heir to one of the strongest empires in the galaxy. From the moment she could walk, she had been trained to rule. She learned strategy before games, diplomacy before friendship, and discipline before joy. Every hour of her life had purpose, yet somehow it all felt empty. Her attendants waited a respectful distance away. They knew better than to interrupt when the princess stared at the city like this. It was a look they had seen often, quiet, distant, unreachable. "Princess," one attendant finally said softly, "the guests have arrived." Salith nodded without turning. "I will come." She moved through the halls with practiced grace. Her long silver-blue robes flowed behind her, glowing faintly with royal markings. The doors to the grand hall opened, revealing hundreds of important figures from across the Dominion and beyond. The moment she entered, the room fell silent. Everyone bowed. Salith acknowledged them with a slight incline of her head and walked to her seat near the high platform. Music resumed. Conversations started again, low and respectful. She listened without really hearing. One noble spoke about strengthening alliances. Another praised her future reign. A military commander spoke of victories at the borders. All of it was important. All of it was correct. None of it made her feel alive. She wondered, not for the first time, if something inside her was broken. Tonight's gathering was different in one small way. Among the many powerful delegations was a minor trade group from Earth. Humanity was still new to interstellar politics. They were known more for adaptability than strength, more for creativity than power. Most guests barely noticed them. Salith noticed because they were not trying to be noticed. The humans stood near the outer edge of the hall, no bright ceremonial armor, no loud displays. Just simple formal clothing and calm behavior. One of them, a tall human with dark hair and tired eyes, seemed more interested in observing the room than impressing it. His name, according to the display information scrolling quietly in Salith's vision, was Elias Ward. Logistics officer. No noble title, no military rank, not even a diplomat by training. That alone made him unusual. As the evening continued, Salith excused herself from the platform and walked among the guests as tradition required. She spoke politely, smiled when expected, and responded with perfect royal courtesy. Yet her gaze kept drifting toward the human delegation. At one point, the flow of people shifted. A group of nobles moved aside, and Salith found herself standing only a few steps away from Elias. He noticed her presence and immediately stepped back, lowering his head in respect. But he did not bow deeply. He did not kneel. He did not look afraid. "I apologize, Your Highness," he said, his voice calm and clear. "I didn't mean to block your path." Salith studied him closely. His posture was respectful but relaxed. His eyes met hers briefly, then shifted away, not out of fear but courtesy. "It is acceptable," she replied. Silence followed. Normally, this was where people rushed to speak, desperate to fill the space. Elias did not. Salith felt a strange urge to continue the conversation. "You are from Earth," she said. "Yes," Elias answered. "It's my first time in the Orcs' capital." "And what do you think of it?" He paused, considering. "It's impressive, very well designed. Not the greatest city in the galaxy, not a divine achievement. Just honest words." "You sound uncertain," Salith said. Elias allowed himself a small smile. "I think some places are so grand that it's hard to take them in all at once." Salith found herself smiling back just slightly. "That is a fair answer." She waited for the usual follow-up. Praise, curiosity about her power, requests, none came. Instead, Elias asked, "May I ask if these gatherings are always this large?" The question caught her off guard. "Yes," she said, "they are considered necessary." "Do you enjoy them?" he asked, then quickly added, "Forgive me if that's not appropriate." Salith hesitated. No one had ever asked her that so directly. "I perform my duty," she said carefully. Elias nodded as if that answer told him enough. "That makes sense." Again, no judgment, no pressure. A nearby court official cleared his throat loudly, clearly uncomfortable with the exchange. Salith noticed and felt a flicker of annoyance. "I would like to continue this conversation," she said, her voice steady. "Walk with me." The official froze. Elias looked surprised. "Of course, Your Highness." They moved toward a quieter corridor lined with tall crystal windows. The noise of the hall faded. "You speak differently than most," Salith said as they walked. "You are not trying to impress me." Elias thought for a moment. "I wouldn't know how." She laughed softly before she could stop herself. The sound surprised both of them. "I have been praised my entire life," she said, "yet your honesty feels lighter." "On Earth," Elias said, "we tend to value being real more than being perfect, at least some of us do." "Is that why humans seem content without great empires?" Salith asked. He shrugged. "We have our problems, but we find happiness in small things, shared meals, quiet moments, choosing what matters to us." Salith slowed her steps. "Happiness," she repeated. Elias glanced at her. "Is that strange to talk about here?" She looked out the window at the glowing city. "It is rarely discussed." They stopped walking. For a moment, neither spoke. "I should return to my delegation," Elias said gently. "Thank you for speaking with me." She nodded. "Thank you for answering honestly." As he walked away, Salith remained where she was, her thoughts unusually restless. Something inside her chest felt warm, unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the palace grew quiet, Salith lay awake in her chamber. The ceiling above her shimmered with a soft star pattern designed to calm the mind. It did not work. Her thoughts returned again and again to the human who did not bow too low, who did not ask for anything, who spoke of happiness as if it were real. She pressed a hand lightly against her chest. For the first time in many cycles, the emptiness did not feel quite so complete. And far across the palace, Elias Ward sat alone in his temporary quarters, staring at the city lights through a narrow window. He replayed the conversation in his mind, unaware that a single honest exchange had already begun to change the course of an empire. The next morning, Princess Salith woke earlier than usual. Soft light filtered through the tall crystal windows of her chamber, casting pale colors across the smooth walls. Normally, her thoughts upon waking were clear and focused, schedules, duties, expectations. Today, they were not. Her mind returned to the previous night. To the human, to the way he spoke without fear, without hunger for favor, to the strange warmth she had felt afterward. She sat up slowly, placing her feet on the cool floor. An attendant entered quietly, sensing the princess was awake. "Good morning, Your Highness," the attendant said. "Your schedule for today has been prepared." Salith nodded, then paused. "What activities are planned for the human delegation from Earth?" The attendant blinked in surprise. "They are scheduled to tour the trade district and attend a minor council briefing. At a cultural observation session," Salith said calmly. "With me present." The attendant hesitated. "With you, Your Highness?" "Yes." "At once," the attendant replied, though confusion showed clearly on her face. Later that day, Elias Ward walked with his fellow humans through the capital's wide streets. Floating transports moved silently above them. Alien citizens of many species passed by, casting curious glances at the newcomers. Elias kept his hands behind his back, listening as their guide explained trade routes and infrastructure. He was paying attention, but his thoughts drifted. He wondered if he would see the princess again, not because he expected it, but because the conversation had stayed with him. Something about her quiet honesty had surprised him. Suddenly, the guide stopped. "Please wait here," the guide said, straightening. "Her Highness is approaching." Elias looked up just as Salith appeared at the far end of the street, accompanied by only 2 guards and 1 attendant. She was dressed more simply than before, her robes lighter, her crown absent. She approached the group calmly. The humans bowed politely. "You may continue your tour," Salith said to the others. Her gaze settled briefly on Elias. "I would like to speak with Officer Ward again." Elias stepped forward, surprised but composed. "Of course, Your Highness." They walked together at a measured pace, the guards following at a respectful distance. "I hope I did not disturb your schedule," Salith said. "Not at all," Elias replied. "I didn't expect another conversation, but I'm glad for it." She nodded. "So am I." They passed through a quieter section of the city, where gardens grew between smooth stone structures. Small alien children played near fountains. Merchants laughed with customers. The scene felt alive in a way the palace never did. You mentioned yesterday that humans find happiness in small things, Salith said. Can you explain that further? Elias considered his words. We don't always succeed, he said honestly. But we try to make time for moments that matter, family dinners, walks. Helping someone without expecting reward. And power, Salith asked, does it not define you? Elias shook his head. It can shape your responsibilities, but it doesn't decide your worth. At least that's how many of us see it. Salith slowed her steps. That is very different from how I was raised. I thought it might be, Elias said gently. They stopped near a small fountain. The water moved in soft patterns, responding to the wind. Tell me something honest, Salith said. When you speak to me, are you afraid? Elias met her gaze. I respect you, but no, I'm not afraid. She studied his face, searching for signs of deception. She found none. Why? She asked. Because you haven't given me a reason to be, he replied. The answer stayed with her. Over the following days, their meetings continued. Sometimes they spoke during official cultural exchanges. Sometimes they walked through the city quietly, speaking of simple things. Elias told her about Earth's oceans, about rainstorms and shared meals during difficult times. Salith told him about her studies, her training, and the loneliness that came with being seen as a symbol instead of a person. For the first time in her life, she laughed freely. But not everyone was pleased. Members of the royal council noticed the change quickly. The princess smiled more. She questioned traditions. She spent less time with high-ranking suitors and more time with a human of no political value. This is concerning, one counselor said during a private meeting. Emotional influence from an outsider is dangerous. We have reviewed the human, another said. No signs of manipulation, no ambition. That makes it worse, the first replied. An influence without motive is unpredictable. They ordered quiet investigations. Elias' background was examined in detail. His records showed nothing remarkable, steady work, no scandals, no hidden agendas. He is ordinary, the council concluded. Salith sensed the growing tension. One evening, after a long discussion with Elias about choice and freedom, she asked him, Do you ever wish your life had more importance? Elias smiled faintly. Sometimes, but importance means different things. Helping one person can matter just as much as ruling millions. She looked at him thoughtfully. Later that night, Salith stood before a large mirror in her chamber. She barely recognized the expression on her own face. There was warmth there, hope, but with it came fear. The next day, Elias received an unexpected summons from palace security. He was escorted to a quiet office where a formal official waited. Officer Ward, the official said, for diplomatic balance, your delegation will be reassigned to a different sector sooner than planned. Elias frowned slightly. Is there a problem? No, the official replied smoothly, just precaution. Elias understood what was really happening. That evening, he requested a meeting with Salith. She agreed immediately. They met in the gardens as artificial stars lit the sky. They're sending us away, Elias said quietly. Salith's expression tightened. I suspected they might. I don't want to cause trouble for you, he said. If my presence creates conflict, you are not the problem, she interrupted. Her voice was firm. The problem is fear. They stood in silence for a moment. I don't know what will happen next, Salith said softly, but meeting you has shown me something I cannot forget. Elias nodded. Then whatever happens, it was worth it. As they parted that night, neither knew what the future held. But both understood one truth clearly now. Something had changed, and the Empire could not ignore it for long. The day after Elias was told about the reassignment, the atmosphere inside the palace shifted. It was subtle, almost invisible, but Princess Salith felt it immediately. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. Advisors watched her more carefully. Guards stood a little closer than before. She did not need anyone to explain what was happening. Change frightened those who depended on old rules. Salith sat in the council chamber alone, waiting. The high ceiling glowed with soft light, and ancient symbols of the Dominion floated above the round table. These symbols represented stability, tradition, and order. For most of her life, they had been a comfort. Today, they felt heavy. The doors opened, and the counselors entered one by one. They took their seats with practiced calm. Their faces were controlled, their voices respectful. Your Highness, the senior counselor began, thank you for meeting with us. Salith inclined her head. You requested this meeting. Speak. We have observed recent developments. the counselor said carefully. Your increased interest in human culture and in one human in particular. Salith did not respond immediately. She folded her hands on the table. You are concerned, she said. We are responsible, another counselor replied. The heir to the Dominion must be protected from external influence. Is honest conversation considered a threat? Salith asked. Silence followed. The human officer has no malicious intent, the senior counselor admitted. But influence does not require intention. Emotional attachment can weaken judgment. Salith's eyes hardened slightly. Or strengthen it. The council exchanged glances. For now, the senior counselor continued, the human delegation will proceed with its reassignment. This is not punishment, it is balance. Salith stood. You speak of balance, she said, her voice calm but firm. Yet you move without consulting me. You are not yet ruling, a counselor said before he could stop himself. The words hung in the air. Salith looked at him slowly. No, she said, but I am learning what kind of ruler I will be. She turned and left the chamber. Across the palace, Elias packed his belongings quietly. His quarters were small, simple, and temporary. He moved with steady hands, but his thoughts were unsettled. He had expected reassignment to feel like relief. Instead, it felt like something unfinished was being taken away. A soft chime sounded at his door. He opened it and froze. Salith stood there without guards, wearing a plain cloak. Her expression was serious, but her eyes held emotion she did not try to hide. I should not be here, she said. Elias stepped aside. Then I won't tell anyone. She entered and looked around the room, taking in its simplicity. They are afraid, she said quietly, not of you, of what I am becoming. Elias closed the door. I never meant to change anything. You didn't, Salith replied. You revealed what was already missing. She took a breath as if steadying herself. They want you gone, she said, soon. I know, Elias answered, and that's okay. She turned to him sharply. It is not. Elias met her gaze. Salith, Your Highness, whatever you choose to call yourself, you can't fight an entire system for one person. Why not? She asked. Because the cost might be too high, he said gently. She looked away. That is what I was taught. They stood in silence for a long moment. I don't regret meeting you, Elias said, even if this is where it ends. Salith felt a tightness in her chest. I do not want it to end. That night she could not sleep. She walked the halls alone, past statues of past rulers who stared forward with cold strength. None of them smiled. She wondered how many of them had been happy. The next day, Salith requested access to the lower districts of the capital, areas she had never visited. The council protested. She insisted. Disguised in simple clothing, accompanied only by a single discreet guard, she walked among ordinary citizens. She saw workers sharing meals, families resting together, and strangers helping one another without command or reward. She felt something settle inside her. Later, she found Elias near the transport hub, preparing for departure. You once said happiness comes from choosing what matters, she said. Yes, Elias replied. What if what matters challenges everything, she asked. Then it's still worth choosing, he said. But the choice has to be yours. That evening, the council issued a formal directive. Elias' ward was to leave the capital at dawn. No exceptions. Salith read the order in silence. Then she made a decision. The next morning, the Grand Assembly Hall was filled. Officials, nobles, and councilors gathered, expecting a routine announcement. Instead, Princess Salith entered wearing full royal attire, her presence commanding immediate silence. She walked to the center of the hall. I have lived my entire life according to expectation, she began. I have fulfilled every duty asked of me, yet no one ever asked if I understood the people I am meant to rule. Murmurs spread. I was told emotion is weakness, she continued. That happiness is distraction. But I have learned otherwise. The council tried to interrupt. She raised a hand and they stopped. A ruler who does not understand joy cannot protect it, Salith said. A ruler who has never been allowed to choose cannot defend freedom. She turned toward the observers' gallery where Elias stood stunned. The human officer did not manipulate me, she said clearly. He reminded me that life has meaning beyond duty. The hall erupted in whispers. I will not order him to stay, Salith said. But I will no longer allow fear to guide my choices. She faced the council. If the Dominion cannot accept a future shaped by understanding rather than control, she said, then perhaps the Dominion must change. Silence followed, deep, heavy, unavoidable. That day, Elias' departure was delayed, not by force. But by the first crack in an empire that had forgotten how to feel, the palace did not return to normal after Salith's words echoed through the grand hall. Nothing did. For the first time in generations, the Orc's dominion stood uncertain. The council had expected obedience, maybe quiet resistance at most. They had not expected the heir to openly challenge the foundation of their rule. Princess Salith was calm, but inside her thoughts moved quickly. She had spoken the truth, yet truth had consequences. In the days that followed, meetings became tense. Council members argued behind closed doors. Noble houses whispered among themselves. Some feared instability. Others feared losing control, and some feared change itself. Elias remained in the capital, though officially his status was temporary delay. Guards did not block him, but they watched carefully. He kept to his quarters most of the time, unsure whether his presence helped or harmed Salith. One evening, Salith visited him again. This time, she did not wear royal colors. She wore simple clothing, her hair loose, her expression tired but determined. "You shouldn't keep coming here," Elias said gently. "I know," she replied, "but if I stop choosing for myself now, everything I said becomes empty." He nodded. "What happens next?" "The council will push back," Salith said. "They will try to pressure me quietly first. If that fails, they may force the issue." Elias frowned. "Force? They believe the Dominion must be protected from emotional rule," she said, "even if that means protecting it from me." Elias felt a chill. "Then this is bigger than us." "It always was," Salith said. "I just refused to see it before." The next council session proved her right. Senior councilors presented a formal proposal. Salith was to begin accelerated preparation for ascension. This included reduced external contact, strict advisory oversight, and immediate engagement discussions with a politically approved partner. It was control disguised as duty. Salith listened without interruption. When they finished, she spoke softly. "You are afraid I will rule differently. We are afraid you will rule emotionally," one counselor replied. "Emotion is not chaos," Salith said. "Ignoring it is." "You would risk the stability of billions for personal attachment?" another demanded. Salith stood. "I would risk comfort to protect meaning." The council declared recess. That night, Salith stood alone on the observation balcony again. The city lights still shone, but she no longer felt distant from them. She understood now that those lights represented lives, real people with joys and fears. Footsteps approached behind her. "You look like someone preparing for a storm," Elias said quietly. She smiled faintly. "That obvious?" "Only to someone who's walked into a few," he replied. She turned to face him. "If things become difficult, you may be asked to leave again." "I expected that," Elias said. "This time," she said, "I might not be able to stop it." Elias met her eyes. "Salith, listen to me. Whatever happens, you don't owe me sacrifice. What you're doing, it's for more than one human." She nodded slowly. "That is why I cannot turn back." The next move came not from the council, but from the people. Word of Salith's speech had spread beyond the palace. Citizens discussed it openly. Some were confused. Some were inspired. Many felt something they had not felt in years, hope. Small gatherings formed in public spaces, not protests, but conversations, questions. People spoke about work-life balance, about joy, about choice. The council noticed. Fear deepened. A closed emergency session was called. "This is becoming dangerous," the senior counselor said. "The heir is encouraging disorder." "She is encouraging reflection," another countered hesitantly. "Reflection leads to doubt. Doubt leads to instability." A decision was made. At dawn, palace security units were deployed, not openly but strategically. Access points were restricted. Communication channels quietly monitored. Salith sensed it immediately. "They're moving," she said to Elias during their final private meeting. "Then it's time," Elias said. "For what?" she asked. "For you to decide how far you're willing to go," he replied. She took a slow breath. "I won't flee, and I won't fight them with force." "Then what will you do?" She looked at the city beyond the window. "I will trust the truth." That same day, the council summoned Salith to the Hall of Authority. This time, it was not a discussion. "The Dominion requires stability," the senior counselor said. "Until your judgment aligns with duty, your public role will be limited." "You mean silenced," Salith replied calmly. "For your own protection," he said. She stepped forward. "No, for your comfort." Guards shifted uneasily. Salith raised her voice, not loud but clear. "You fear losing control more than losing purpose." "This is over," the counselor snapped. "Return to your chambers." Salith did not move. Instead, she activated the chamber's central broadcast node. Screens across the Capitol lit up. Citizens paused mid-step. Workers stopped. Homes fell silent. Salith's image appeared everywhere. "I was told happiness weakens rulers," she said, her voice steady. "But I have seen your lives, your kindness, your quiet strength." The council shouted orders. Guards hesitated. "I will not rule you through fear," Salith continued. "And I will not allow fear to rule me." She looked directly into the main camera. "If you believe a future guided by understanding is worth protecting," she said, "then stand with me, not against tradition but beyond it." The signal cut abruptly. The hall erupted. "You've crossed the line," the senior counselor said, pale with anger. Salith met his gaze. "So did you long ago." Outside the palace, the city stirred. People spoke. Networks filled with discussion. No riots, no violence, just voices, and they were not afraid. Elias watched from a secure corridor, heart pounding. He understood now. This was not about him or even Salith alone. This was about humanity's quiet gift, reminding others that strength could be gentle. That night, as the palace lights dimmed, Salith was escorted, not imprisoned but confined. She did not resist. She did not regret. Because for the first time in the history of the Orcs' dominion, an empire had been forced to listen. And the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The chamber where Princess Salith was confined was quiet, but not cold. The council had chosen comfort over cruelty, believing kindness would soften her resolve. They were wrong. Salith stood near the window, watching the capital below. The city was different now. Lights still floated in the air, transports still moved along their paths, but something unseen had changed. Conversations carried longer. Public squares stayed filled even after nightfall. People were thinking, questioning, choosing. That was something no council decree could undo. Guards stood outside her chamber, not hostile, not friendly, unsure. Hours passed. Then days. Inside the palace, tension grew. Council members argued openly now. Some demanded stricter control. Others warned that pushing harder would fracture the dominion. Reports arrived from outer districts. Citizens refusing overtime mandates. Officials requesting policy reviews, governors asking questions they had never dared to ask before. The Dominion was not collapsing. It was waking up. Elias Ward remained under observation but was not detained. He moved carefully through the palace corridors, aware that many eyes followed him, some with suspicion, others with quiet respect. One evening, an unexpected visitor arrived at his door. It was the senior counselor. "You have caused great disruption," the counselor said without greeting. Elias remained calm. "I didn't give orders, I didn't ask for power." "That may be true," the counselor said, "but your influence cannot be denied." Elias met his gaze. "Influence only works where something is already broken." The counselor was silent for a long moment. "What do humans call this?" he asked finally. Elias thought. "Growth." "And fear of it?" The counselor left without another word. That same night, a decision was made. The council announced that Salith's ascension would proceed immediately, but under revised authority. She would rule, but with council oversight permanently strengthened. It was a compromise meant to appear generous while keeping control. Salith was brought before the council chamber to hear the terms. She listened carefully. When they finished, she asked one question. "Will the people have a voice?" The council hesitated. "Within reason," the senior counselor replied. Salith shook her head slowly. "Then nothing has changed. You are risking civil fracture," he warned. "No," she said calmly. "You are risking irrelevance." She turned away. The council expected fear. They did not expect patience. Salith requested a single thing, an open forum broadcast across the Dominion where citizens could speak. No editing, no filtering. The council refused. Then something unexpected happened. Planetary governors began granting such forums themselves. Local networks followed. Voices spread faster than control ever could. The council realized too late that power was no longer centralized. Days later, massive screens across the Capitol lit up again, this time not hacked, not forced, but invited. Salith stood before them not as a confined heir, but as a leader accepted by the people. The guards stepped aside without orders. The council had lost the moment. "I do not promise perfection," Salith said to the Dominion. "I promise honesty. I promise to listen. And I promise that no one will be told their happiness is weakness again." The response was not loud. It was steady. Approval came in votes, endorsements, public declarations of trust. The council had no choice left. They ratified her ascension fully, not because they agreed, because they could no longer stand against the will of the Dominion. Salith was crowned ruler of the Orcs' dominion under a sky filled with living light. She did not wear the heaviest crown. She chose a lighter one, symbolic, not imposing. Elias watched from the crowd, unnoticed, just another face among many. After the ceremony, Salith found him standing near the edge of the plaza. "You stayed," she said. "I wanted to see how the story ended," Elias replied. She smiled. "It hasn't." They walked together quietly away from the noise. "I won't ask you to stay," Salith said. "You deserve your own path," Elias nodded, "and I won't ask you to choose between duty and joy again." They stopped. "But," Salith continued, "if you choose to walk beside me, it will be because you want to, not because I rule." Elias met her eyes. "That's the only way I would." Years passed. Under Salith's rule, the Dominion changed. Policies shifted toward balance. Work cycles shortened. Education expanded beyond obedience into creativity. Other empires watched closely, confused by the Dominion's growing stability. They asked how it was achieved. The answer was simple, though difficult to accept. A ruler learned how to be happy. Elias remained by Salith's side, not as consort, not as symbol, but as companion and advisor. He reminded her of small things, quiet moments, shared meals. And when diplomats from distant stars asked how a single human had altered the course of a galactic power, Salith would answer calmly. "He didn't change us. He reminded us who we were allowed to be." Humanity gained no fleets, no territory, no demands. Yet across the galaxy, a new truth spread. Humans did not conquer through force. They conquered through understanding, and the stars were better for it.